It's a revolution in biology.
This is rapid, man-made evolution.
Nova wonders, can we make life?
Wednesday night at 9 on MPT. This program is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the Reginald F. Lewis Museum and the 2018 Maryland Democratic Gubernatorial Primary Debate. I'm Jason Newton from WBAL-TV here in Baltimore, and I will be your moderator for this evening. We are joined by 8 candidates for governor in studio and one who will join us on tape tonight with a recorded message. But before I introduce them all, I'd like to at least acknowledge the sudden passing of Kevin Kamenetz. Mr. Kamenetz dedicated his life to public service, first as a prosecutor in Baltimore City, then as a member of the Baltimore County Council and Baltimore County Executive. He was supposed to be here with us today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor. All of us here send his wife Jill and their 2 boys our deepest condolences. The 8 candidates for the Democratic candidacy in studio right now are Rashawn Baker, Valerie Irvin, Jim Shea, Alec Ross, Richard Madalino, Krish Vignaraja, James Jones, and Ben Jealous. And later, as we said, we'll hear from Ralph Jaffe via a recorded segment as well. Also want to introduce our distinguished panel of questioners from WBAL-TV, Jane Miller, from Maryland Public Television, Charles Robinson, and from WBAL-AM, Clarence Mitchell IV, also known as C4. We will start with each candidate giving you an opening statement, about 1 minute, 30 seconds. The panel will then ask questions to each candidate. They'll have 45 seconds to answer that question. If they are attacked, if someone is attacked throughout, they'll have 45 seconds rebuttal as well. The candidates drew numbers to see who will go first with their opening statements. Mr. Baker, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging Kevin Kamenetz and the service he's done to the state. You know, too many Marylanders feel ignored, left out, and forgotten by this governor. For me, it's personal. In school, I struggled with reading. I acted out and I got held back. But with teachers and loving parents, I got the education I needed and I became the first in my family to graduate from college. I won't rest until every child in the state of Maryland has that same opportunity. Whether it's county executive or as a director of a nonprofit, my life has been about taking on the tough political fights to make real progress in the state of Maryland. And now, when we have a governor that has enabled this president and his divisive agenda to tear this nation apart, we're in the fight of our lives. I say it's time that we protect our values and move Maryland forward. And that's why I'm running for governor. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Valerie Irvin, and 10 days ago, I was running for lieutenant governor alongside Baltimore County Executive Kevin Kamenetz. And like all of us here, we had no idea what would happen after Kevin's passing. As we sat with the family during Shiva, we waited for the requisite number of days to go by, and I literally had 48 hours to make up my mind as the state statute requires. So I, last Thursday, became a candidate for governor. So I've been actual candidate for 3 days. And I chose a running mate from Baltimore County. Her name is Marisol Johnson. And together we are uplifting Kevin Kamenetz's memory, but more than that, when Kevin chose me to be his lieutenant governor, he knew that I would be able to serve in his stead if anything untoward or unexpected happened. And we never expected this to happen. So I'm introducing myself to voters in Maryland across this state for the first time, although I was on the campaign trail with Kevin Kamenetz for 5 months. And during that time, we were a great team. You know, I used to run track in high school. I ran the 4x4 relay. And I see this as a handoff of the baton, Kevin to me, as I run this last leg of the governor's race for Kevin, but for Maryland, for me and for Marisol Johnson. And for those of you watching, please make sure that you support us in this race, because the state statutes are very clear about our ability to be on the ballot. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shea, minute 30, please.
Hi, I'm Jim Shea, and let me too recognize Kevin Kamenetz and his dedicated public service for us all. I'm running for governor because we have to beat Larry Hogan. Maryland's future depends on it. I'm a lifelong Baltimorean. My wife, Barbara, and I raised our family here. Maryland's been good to us. During my career, I have led the 12 public colleges that make up the university system of Maryland. I have fought for mass transit, and I have worked to revitalize East and West Baltimore, all the while building a business and creating jobs. While Marylanders have focused on Donald Trump, Larry Hogan has taken us in the wrong direction. Our schools have slipped. We sit in the worst commuter traffic in the nation, and our economy lags behind our neighbors. My running mate, Brandon Scott, and I will get Maryland back on track. And with wise investments, we will build a better Maryland for our children. Now, those wise investments include public education, transportation, economic development, and public safety. Brandon and I have deep and varied experience in all of those areas. Those are where we need investments. I think you will find that I have a long history of leading large organizations in these areas with success. I hope you'll support me.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Mr. Ross.
My name is Alec Ross, and I'm running for governor of Maryland because I believe that talent is everywhere in Maryland. Talent is in every zip code in Maryland, but opportunity is not, and that needs to change. We have 4% unemployment. We have the highest average median income households in the country. We have some great schools, and yet we also have some really struggling schools, some of which don't even have heat or air conditioning. Ours, of all 50 states in the country, ours is the only one whose economy is supposed to go down this year. We have too many families that are struggling with a loved one with substance abuse or with a mental health issue. We sit in soul-crushing commutes. Too many of the students who I taught 6th grade in Baltimore are dead or in jail. It does not have to be that way. In Maryland, we're the home of the NIH, the Goddard Space Center, the Applied Physics Laboratory, world-class universities. This is the place where we can imagine and invent a better future. I've been a teacher, I've been a janitor, I've been a senior Obama administration official, and I've written a best-selling book about our economic future. I'm a husband, I'm a father to 3 kids. My name is Alec Ross, and I hope to be your next governor.
Mr. Ross, thank you. Mr. Madaleno.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for having me. My name is Rich Madaleno. I'm a state senator. I am a father of 2. I am a husband, a resident of Kensington, a lifelong Maryland resident, and a lifelong Democratic voter in the state of Maryland. You know, you're going to hear tonight from all of us about our agenda for the state of Maryland, and I think one of the things you're going to see is there's a great degree of agreement. So with that in mind, what separates us out from each other? What makes us best to focus and compete with and defeat Larry Hogan in the fall? I would say it's my unique, proven record of results for the people of the state of Maryland, from Ocean City to Oakland, Maryland, and my leadership on the issues that matter for the people of the state. You know, when it comes to campaign finance reform, as Democrats, we would all agree we need public financing of campaigns to get big corporate money and big donor money out of the race. But I'm the only one who's voluntarily following the rules of the Fair Campaign Fund in Maryland so that I'm not beholden to special interests or big donors. It's easy for a governor to say what's wrong and what's right. I'm the only person who's released his tax returns, well, me and Jim Shea, to follow up with our calls to Donald Trump to release his tax returns. I look forward to your questions tonight and the spirited debate.
All right. Ms. Vignarajah.
My name is Krish Vignarajah, and I've been called Donald Trump's worst nightmare. I'm a mom, I'm an immigrant, and I worked at the White House as Michelle Obama's policy director. I was 9 months old when my parents fled a civil war. They came to Maryland with no jobs and just $200 in their pockets. I'm not the product of politics or privilege. I'm the daughter of 2 Baltimore City public school teachers and the only candidate who's the product of Maryland public schools. I'm running because I can't sit on the sidelines as our kids freeze in classrooms and die from overdoses and gun violence, as our neighbors go bankrupt from rising healthcare costs, and our economy is stuck in traffic, all while our governor does nothing. We've tried politics as usual. It hasn't worked. We've tried the old boys club. It hasn't worked. We need new leadership. We need one of us who's going to fight for all of us. Some say no man can beat Larry Hogan. Well, I'm no man. There is an opportunity, and I'm excited to be running for governor. My name is Krish, and I hope to be your next governor.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jones.
My name is James Jones, and I'm a lifelong Marylander. And I'm running for governor because I see that Larry Hogan has Maryland and the people of Maryland going in the wrong direction. I think the people of Maryland are tired of Larry Hogan spending money the way he wants to spend it for his own agenda. People are tired of their children going to schools, not having heat and air conditioning. People are tired of the murders that are occurring every day in our streets. And the other thing that I'm really concerned about is Larry Hogan, it says that the state receives $450 million every year, and each of us agreed to put money into schools, but the one thing that needs to happen is accountability. What is happening to the money that the state is receiving? What is Larry Hogan doing with that? That's why I'm running, because it's time for accountability, and it's time that, you know, the people are involved in the growth of the state of Maryland. And that's what I want to do as governor, involve the people of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Jealous.
Yeah, let me just say before I start that I miss Kevin tonight. I miss his wit and his wisdom, and my thought goes out to his wife and his 2 boys. Hi, I'm Ben Jealous. I'm the former national president of the NAACP. If you want to make Donald Trump's blood pressure go up, if you want to beat Hogan, send a civil rights leader to be your next governor. I'm running to make sure that we fully fund our schools, that we end killings of unarmed civilians by the police, and that we make sure that all of us have health care we can actually afford to use. I'm the only one up here with a plan for state-based Medicare for all. Folks will tell you that the things I want to do are big. Well, I specialize in getting big things done. I was named the Person of the Year by the Baltimore Sun because in 1 year, I led the successful effort to abolish the death penalty in our state. I helped pass marriage equality, and I helped pass the DREAM Act. We will beat Hogan the way that we won each of those big wins. We will pull people together across every line they say is supposed to divide us. I'm proud to have been endorsed by teachers and nurses and hundreds of thousands of working people across the state. I hope to earn your vote.
Mr. Jealous, thank you. The first question this evening, Jay Miller from WBAL-TV. Jay.
Thank you, Jason. Each of you has made education a real top priority in your campaign if you read across your platforms. What is the most significant one thing you would do to improve the educational opportunities for youth children and youth in Maryland? And if it costs more money, how would you pay for it? Mr. Baker.
Thank you. As somebody who's run the 2nd largest jurisdiction in the state and the 2nd largest school system, the most important thing facing us is money. The current commission just told us what we all already knew, and that is we're $2 billion underfunding our education system. And so the way that you do it is the way that I did it as an executive. And that is, and the way that we talked about this when I was on appropriation, is you make that your priority. You fund the education system first, and you fund it fully, which means you're going to have to make choices on the other things in the budget. But you can't rely on, you know, a scheme here, a scheme there. You make it the priority of the budget, and you fund it first, and you fund it fully.
Mr. Baker, thank you.
Thank you. This was a #1 priority for Kevin and my campaign. I served on the Board of Education before I became a county council member in Montgomery County, where I served 2 terms. As I was listening to Mr. Baker, I can tell you that across the state of Maryland, the per pupil costs of students is almost the same across all the counties, but you can see a range of outcomes that are not the same. And one of the things I'd like to focus on is not just pre-K, but we're talking about babies being born in the state of Maryland whose moms are not healthy, whose babies are born with deficits, and we want to do K through 12. We're actually working on a project right now. I was before I started running with a foundation to do that in the District of Columbia, and it's working.
Thank you, sir.
Am I next?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes.
You can just go right down the line.
Yes, I have a full plan with 6 parts to best practices. And I wouldn't like my answer to your question to be misinterpreted. They're all important. We can't cherry pick. The most important, if you make me choose, is a new and much better career track for teachers so that they can advance, be promoted, develop professionally without having to leave the classroom. That will cost more money, and my plan addresses that too. It does need to be a high priority. We're the wealthiest state in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We need to make it a priority. But we also need to take increases in general revenue. We need to take specific flows of income, like from casinos and perhaps sports betting and other revenue flows that will be coming. We need to make sure we capture them and make sure they go to public education.
Mr. Ross?
If you want to fully fund education in Maryland, elect somebody to be governor who's a former 6th grade teacher in West Baltimore. I fell in love with and married the math teacher across the hall. She's now in her 3rd decade as an educator in Baltimore City Public Schools, and we have 3 kids who are all students in Baltimore City Public Schools. Biggest problem we have is equity. I remember teaching 3 classes of students with a single set of textbooks. Kids couldn't take the books out of the classroom. We've got to meet the promises that today's politicians have failed to deliver on, like getting the casino and the lottery money to be additive to the budget, not something that can be switched in and switched out. Elect a teacher governor if you want to fully fund education.
Mr. Ross, thank you. Mr. Madalino.
Thank you for the question, Gene. As you may know, I am the only candidate who is actually a member of the Kirwan Commission. Implementing the Kirwan Commission recommendations are going to be the top priority for whoever is elected governor, because it's going to be what frames the debate next year. We will start rolling out those recommendations with a plan that has already been developed by Johns Hopkins University, which focuses on early grade tutors. In fact, the legislation that we enacted this year starts the down payment on that. So we're going to have extra tutors to do one-on-one work with young people, kindergarten to 2nd grade, who are falling behind in math and in English, so that they are better prepared for the whole work. And that supplement will help propel young people forward.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Vignaraja.
Education is the reason I'm running, and there's a reason why I've been called the education candidate. I'm the only candidate in the field who's the product of Maryland Public Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. I'm the only candidate who's the daughter of Baltimore City Public School teachers. I'm the only candidate who's running with a lifelong teacher and former president of the Baltimore Teachers Union. My top priority is funding and fully funding our schools. But my policy is from cradle to career. It's about rebuilding our crumbling schools. It's about guaranteeing universal pre-K. It's about investing in science, technology, engineering, arts, math, financial literacy, and civics education. It's about providing hot and healthy breakfasts and lunches in our schools. It's about making sure that when our kids come out of school, they are either career ready, particularly for the trades, or college ready, which is why we're guaranteeing free community college and debt-free tuition at our HBCUs.
All right. Mr. Jones, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that wisdom should be applied here, because basically I want to see the schools funded. But once again, there needs to be checks and balances. There's money going into the system from the state. And here we are, we're talking about taking money from somewhere else to fund schools. And you know, when you take money from somewhere else, it costs the taxpayers. So I think we need to go in, like I said, checks and balances. Let's see what the budget's like and try and find out where this money is so that we can use it where it was appropriated to go. So that's where I would start.
Right. Mr. Jellis, the floor is yours.
Yep. My mom sued Western High School for Girls when she was 12, so she could desegregate it when she was 15. We've known, at least since then, that until we fully fund our schools, everything else is just a theory, that nothing actually works right till we fully fund our schools. I'm proud to have been endorsed by 74,000 teachers across 23 counties to do just that. They know that I specialize in getting big things done. I was also proud that President Obama chose me to serve on his commission to help guide our nation in improving our schools for all of our kids. We have to make sure that our kids show up to kindergarten ready to learn, and that's why I have a plan for universal pre-K, all the way through high school to make sure that they come out ready and prepared for a job.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Robinson, you're up.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about economics versus economic expectancy and economic reality. As all of you know, Maryland has a very diverse business base. You know, we've got Washington, where we have a lot of people who work there. We also have a solid industrial sector. And we have a large military force that works here in Maryland, and the number of jobs related to research at universities is growing. I want you guys to look into your crystal balls, literally, and tell me, where do we go? Should we add? Should we enhance? I want to start with you, Mr. Shea, because you have cut your teeth as the head of a law firm. Tell me, what do you see in that crystal ball?
Well, we have a lot of assets, and you've just described them, but we've got a lot of problems. What we need, first and foremost, is to get a good education plan and stick to it. That's what Massachusetts did starting in the mid-'80s, and it's #1 in education today and #1 in economic development. We need transportation and infrastructure. We need to invest in Maryland, and I would build on our strengths. It's really important that we diversify from a total or too much dependence on federal jobs. We need private jobs, and we need to develop them. I've done that as part of the university system. I've done that as part of the empowerment zone.
Mr. Ross, same question. What do you think? What should we be doing?
We have a strange barbelled economy in Maryland. We have a lot of knowledge workers, a lot of people who go to work wearing a lab coat or a white shirt and an orange tie. But then we have a lot of people working at or around minimum wage, and we have a thin middle. My personal focus would be to make Maryland the America's center for world-class apprenticeships, to help people who don't necessarily have a college degree, aren't meant to get one, get a pathway into the skilled trades. Average age of a plumber in our state, 61. Average age of an electrician, 59. These are jobs with dignity, and we don't have enough of them.
Mr. Jealous, I want to turn to you because a lot of people don't believe that you believe in entrepreneurship. Answer that question.
You know, when I was running around with Bernie Sanders across this country, I used to say I'm a venture capitalist campaigning for a socialist. The reality is I spend every day investing in companies, including some in this state, and growing them into big companies. And what I know is that we as a state have the highest rate of federal dollars per capita in research, and yet one of the lowest rates of starting new businesses. We should have an office of tech transfer in the governor's office. We should be doing for the state what Johns Hopkins has helped to do here in Baltimore, holding on to more startups, and what UMD is doing down in College Park. We can do a lot to create wealth here. We must do it in an inclusive way and stop these years of Hogan launching new industries with only white male companies benefiting.
Mr. Baker, I want to turn to you because you have mentioned on the road many times that you have created something different in Prince George's County. But a lot of people say that people at the lower end are missing from jobs.
No, what we did in Prince George's County when we took over was that we were near the bottom in job creation. Now, for 5 quarters in a row, we have led not only the state in job creation, but we led the Washington region. And the reason we did that is we diversified. We just didn't rely on federal jobs. We also looked at entertainment, high tech, and attracting. But we did it in a couple of ways. One was we actually used incentive funds to not only invest in big projects like you see in FBI or the hospital we're building there, but also in small and medium-sized businesses. So they went from 1 employee to 5 employees. But that sustained it throughout. We also looked at how we were doing our regulation and made it more business friendly. But we didn't just talk about being business friendly, we actually did it.
I want to talk to the 2 female candidates in this race because as I look around, there are not enough female entrepreneurs in this state. And there are a lot of barriers. So Ms. Vijayarajna, how do you fix this?
Sure. So I was in business before and after I was in the Obama administration for 5 years. And I will tell you, Maryland is one of the toughest places to do business. Under Governor Hogan, our state hasn't been open for business. It's been open for businesses leaving. And so for me, it's about a few things that we need to focus on. One is to the question of small businesses in particular. We need to support women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. And what I want to see is, as governor, I won't roll out the red tape. I'll roll out the red carpet for our businesses, because right now they are being nickeled and dimed. But second, we need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in transportation. We need to invest in universal high-speed broadband. But we also need to invest in an innovation economy by growing our biotech, our cybersecurity, and our IT industries.
Ms. Vint, same question.
Thank you very much. I want to go back and tie this to the first question that you asked the two gentlemen. In my crystal ball, I see workforce development tied to economic development, tied to colleges, universities, and high schools. Because what we need to do is prepare the students coming out of school for the jobs that are actually available. And I think that Kevin Kamenetz had a great plan for this in Baltimore County when he had to look the steel workers in the eyes and say, steel is not coming back, so how do we reorient people for the jobs of the future? And I think that that's really important. And as you talk about women in entrepreneurship, we have to find the young women who are coming out of high schools and community colleges and get them prepared to open up the businesses so that they can create work.
Mr. Madaleno, you get the last answer to this question, but as you know, this governor has been talking about business since day one. What do you do?
Well, it's interesting, he's been talking about business from day one, and we lag the country in job growth. We're the only state with a negative outlook. So whatever he's doing is not working. Look, I agree, we need a strong foundation. That means good education, that means good job training, that means strong infrastructure. What can we do right now where I think we have an incredible advantage, and what I would do as governor is make sure we invest in venture funds into veterans. We have so many people who exit the military from their last posting in Maryland, whether it be at Bethesda or Andrews or the NSA or at Aberdeen. They have the most recent technological skills. They've been rebuilding infrastructure all over the world, high tech, low tech. We should be investing in these people as our future job creators.
Thank you, everyone.
C4.
Hello, all. Baltimore City has been recognized by USA Today as the most dangerous city among the top 50 cities in America as it relates to violent crime, according to FBI numbers. Baltimore City has experienced over 1,000 homicides, over 2,100 non-fatal shootings in the last 3 years since the riots of 2015. Ben Jealous, beginning with you. We just saw in Annapolis this legislative session, mandatory minimums increase on certain crimes with handguns and things like that. We also saw money going to programs like the Safe Streets programs. Where would your emphasis be as governor on trying to battle this with Maryland's top city, Baltimore City, the whole issue of crime?
We have to do the things that work. Safe streets, we shouldn't just keep kind of nickel and diming it, putting in a few more dollars. We have to do what cities like New York City have done when they were facing violence and fully invest in safe streets. It brings down shootings in every neighborhood in which it's active by 26% on average. And yet we can go much further, and we need to. We also need to go back to a first things first approach to our policing. We need to end the failed broken windows theory, which frankly distracts our cops. And we need to get focused on solving homicides and rapes and home invasions. Last time we checked, there were 3,700 unopened rape kits in our state. That is outrageous.
Ms. Vignarajah?
Sure. This is where I appreciate you highlighting the statistics, because every month in Baltimore we have a mass shooting. Over 90% of the victims are killed by guns. Over 90% of the victims are black men. And so for me, it is recognizing that mass incarceration, this racist war on drugs, as well as mandatory minimums, are not working. So for me, it's about addressing the school to prison pipeline by supporting programs like Operation Safe Streets. It's treating addiction as a disease. It is recognizing that crime and criminal justice is not just a matter of crime, it is a matter of poverty, educational and economic opportunity, public health. And so that's where we need to address this as a holistic issue.
Mr. Shea?
Alone among these candidates, Brandon Scott and I are deeply invested in Maryland. We don't just live here, we've worked here our whole careers. We've grown up here. I'm involved in the business community. Brandon Scott's involved in city government. We care deeply about Baltimore, and these are terrible problems that you've just described. There are three interrelated problems in Baltimore City. One, we have an epidemic of violence. Two, we lack an effective system of restorative justice. And three, the community's lost its trust in the police department. We have to solve all three of those problems. Picking one won't do, two won't do, all three need to be solved. I think mandatory minimums are a bad idea because they take away discretion from judges who are supposed to judge. We want all parties, prosecutors, judges, and police working at their top in order to solve this problem and not restraining anyone.
Senator Madaleno, I want to add to that the fact that we have our outgoing police commissioner in federal court today because of a variety of issues. Baltimore City Police Department is a state agency. What responsibility does the state of Maryland have to the ongoing structure of the Baltimore City Police Department in addition to the crime problem?
The state needs to be a partner with the city. The state needs to re-engage the way it did, frankly, during the O'Malley administration. When you outlined the 1,000 murders that have occurred over the last 3 years, well, that was also since Governor Hogan has pulled back its involvement, the state's involvement with crime fighting in the state of Maryland. You know, you may say what you want about city stat and state stat. Governor O'Malley was making sure the state was a partner with all agencies of city government to fight crime, to build a stronger city. Governor Hogan has walked away from the city. He might have a nice relationship with the mayor, but he hasn't engaged with the people of the city. You know, he colored the city into the bay in one of the press conferences because that's what he's good at, press conferences. I want to get into the streets, into city government, and help the state be a true partner in fighting crime in our city.
Executive Baker, same question to you.
You know, this is an issue I face every day. We have the second largest jurisdiction in Prince George's County, and homicides were rising when I took over, just like here in the city. What happened was, and Rich is exactly right, the Governor O'Malley came in, helped us stand up our county stat, our 311, and additionally came in with the state police and with resources to help us get a hold of the crime. Provided more state's attorneys, more sheriffs for us, and provided more resources. Right now, there are Marylanders dying in Baltimore City, and the governor acts as if they're from some foreign place. He's MIA. You can't do this alone. I can tell you from experience, you need a governor that's involved, which is why that's what I will be, because I've seen it firsthand, and I deal with it every day.
Ms. Irvin, as governor, what would you do to help Baltimore City?
I really love the question. You know what really disturbs me is this is not new. It's not new under Governor Hogan. It wasn't new under Governor O'Malley. We have deep structural racism in Baltimore City and in other jurisdictions in Maryland that has to be dealt with. Minimum sentences do not work. They destroy the fabric of the community. And so one of the things we have to do is actually acknowledge what it is we're up against. And so when we hear the stories about what's happening in Baltimore today with the police commissioner, there's no trust of the citizens of Baltimore with their police department. There has to be a complete reorientation in Baltimore City from maybe replacing everybody at the top of these agencies.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Vignarajah, what would you do?
So I've answered.
I think
we've
been
already
there.
answered.
Mr. Jones is still
Mr.
there.
Jones, I lost my track. Go ahead, Mr. Jones. I'm sure you would be.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones.
I'm a chaplain for the police department. So right now, the police department is undergoing a lack of well, they don't have as many police officers as they need. And the one thing that needs to be done is that the training at the police academy needs to be different. They need to implement some type of urban training that will offset what's going on in the streets. The other thing is we need to put money, invest into the police department, because once again, you know, these guys, they have roll call, and sometimes you have maybe 7 and 8 officers who have to cover a district. So money needs to be invested, maybe some incentive to bring more officers to the academy.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Alec Ross, I know I haven't come to you yet.
I'd like to answer this question by responding to the parents of Antonio Manning, Michael Luckett, Michael Washington, and the parents of all the other students who I taught who died in gun violence in Baltimore. We failed you, and your babies are dead. And as governor, we aren't going to just pass laws to take guns off the street and strengthen our gun safety laws. We're going to innovate. When I was in the Obama administration, I led the breaking case of emergency team. I was who you called when there was an emergency. There's an emergency here. One way we're going to innovate, we're going to be the first state in the country where you can only shoot a gun where there's a smart grip on it. If there's not a biometric match, that gun won't shoot.
Thank you, sir. We have to move on. Jane, you're up again.
The Hogan administration withdrew state support of the Red Line Transit project in Baltimore. As governor, would you propose a replacement project of significant size to improve the Baltimore region's transit system? Mr. Baker.
Yes. In addition to supporting the Purple Line in the Washington region, both County Executive Leggett and I supported the Red Line because we understood in order for Maryland to grow its job economy, we need those two parts of our state thriving. That's what the transit allows us to do, is to build around it. So I would come out in favor and push for, at our federal level, the Red Line coming back. In addition to that, I look at our transit inside Baltimore City so we can make sure, working with the mayor, that we can get people from the job centers to the job centers from where they are. We also have to look at, and this is what the Red Line would have done for us, is create job centers throughout those stops. So right now we've got to look at how we can place job centers throughout the Baltimore region. So I would, thank you.
Ms. Irvin, and you just go right down the line.
Oh, sure, yes. Absolutely, I'm going to begin where you started. I'm from Montgomery County. We supported the Purple Line for many years, and now the alignment has been paid for, but Hogan has kind of like watered it down. It's called the Lavender Line now. It's not what we were hoping, but it is a line. Here in Baltimore City, Kevin and I talked a lot about how Baltimore is one of the few world-class cities with no transit connectivity. And connectivity is important not just for the people who live here in Baltimore City, but people who want to come in and out of Baltimore. It would be one of my #1 priorities to make sure that that $900 million that Larry Hogan cut and probably put it in road projects in rural Maryland and bring that right back to Baltimore City.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Shea.
For 10 years, I was the founding chair of the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. We worked hard to get the Red Line up. We were close, and he cut it out and forfeited nearly $1 billion. We need a Red Line, but that project is now back at the end of the queue, and under Trump, there's no queue. So we need, in addition to pursuing that, we need alternatives. Bus rapid transit, extending the metro, but let me tell you what is not an alternative, is the new Baltimore link that Larry Hogan has put in. The first day it was in, I went up to Sandtown, Winchester to catch a bus from there to the Amazon warehouse where I might have gotten a job. 2 hours after getting on the bus, I still wasn't there. That is not right. We need to get Baltimoreans to work.
All right there. Thank you, sir.
If the Red Line served white Republicans, construction would be going on right now. It's as simple as that. People have soul-crushing commutes traveling from East Baltimore and West Baltimore to where the jobs are downtown, Owings Mills, Towson. And what do those soul-crushing commutes mean? It means that mom and dad aren't there to make a hot breakfast in the morning. It means that mom and dad are getting home later and can't help with homework at the end of the school day. As governor, I will make bold efforts to take our absolutely pathetic, horrendous, god-awful public transportation system in this region and bring it into the 21st century where it belongs.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Jane, for the question. The easy answer is, of course, yes, we need to restart the Red Line. Mr. Shea is completely correct. We are now at the end of the line, and the Trump administration has ended the line. So we need to start thinking about other ways to improve congestion or to improve mobility within the Red Line. It is important to note that the only reason why we have the funds to move forward with the Purple Line, why we were ready to go with the Red Line, was the revenue measures that I championed as a member of the legislature, which has given us the flexibility to move forward. This year, I was very proud to once again lead on fully funding the need to stabilize the WMATA system in the Washington area. And in that same measure, we put $200 million aside for MTA for capital improvements and required a region-wide plan to be done with the local governments included.
Thank you. Ms. Vignarajah.
I feel strongly about public transportation because for my family, when we moved into the St. Agnes apartments in Edmondson Heights, if my father hadn't been able to walk to Route 40 and hop on a bus, our family of 4 would have been on welfare instead of his one teacher's salary. So for me, it's about investing in the Red Line, the Purple Line, better Metro, as well as better MARC. I rode the Penn Line, and I will tell you, every day it was a roll of the dice. But it also has to be about investing in smarter solutions, reversible roads, smart card sharing, making sure that our buses are actually convenient and usable. But it's also about investing in non-traditional transportation systems, like making there bike lanes that are available for folks who want to go that route as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think that the Red Line should be restarted again, but the other piece is that it's easy to say that you want to put money into mass transit in Baltimore City, and I for one, I used to catch buses, but I think what needs to happen, first of all, is that there needs to be a sit down with the people in the transit administration to see exactly what the problem is and see how it can be fixed. Because I know that, I don't really know exactly what the total problem is, but I'm sure that they would have a better idea of telling us what needs to be done.
Mr. Jealous.
We need to make sure that transportation works for all of us. As the youngest president CEO in the history of the NAACP, we focused a lot on this around the country. Here in Baltimore, where my family has been rooted since my grandparents moved here in 1941, it's especially urgent. I went back to the public housing projects where my mom grew up. I asked a boy there, what do you want from the next governor? He said, fix the bus system, this one broken. And then he said, I used to walk 2 blocks with my mom to the bus. Now I walk 6. And then someone jumped in and said, and the only people who profit are the criminals who prey on us in the next 4 blocks. I talked to my cousin in West Baltimore. His commute to BWI is 5 hours round trip. So yes, we will revive the Red Line. We will shift our focus back to mass transit. We will make sure that our gas tax is used for that. We have to make sure that the people of Maryland can get to their jobs and back easily.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about divided government. Obviously, right now we have a Republican governor and we have a Democratic legislature. One of the things that seems to divide a lot of folks in this state is the issue of taxes. So, Mr. Jealous, I want to start with you. You have put on the table that you wanted free college education. How are you planning to pay for it? Are you going to raise taxes, or are you going to use some other gimmick or whatever to pay for this?
What got my family out of poverty in West Baltimore, my grandparents, my mom, is when my granddad was able to go to the University of Maryland School of Law and the tuition was $200. If that had kept up with inflation today, it'd be $2,600. It's actually more than $31,000. And we are layering our young people in debt, and it's killing our economy. They buy fewer cars, they buy fewer homes, we stay stuck. So what do? We get our priorities straight. I put a plan on the table to cut $660 million from our prison budget and to ship it back into public higher education, because that's frankly where it should have been going all along. I've also said I'm very comfortable saying that we will tax the 1% more. And in the process, we can make sure that we start with all of our community colleges being tuition free and go from there.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, I hate to tell you, Democrats in this state kind of believe that if you get in, you're going to tax somebody. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. Right now, they're spending a lot of money doing different things. Just recently, Larry Hogan signed into or signed a bill for free education. And whenever you do things like that, you have to take money from one place to put into that situation that you're doing. But it's going to cost taxpayers money. No, I think that I would like to, just like health care, I would like to see seniors have better health care. But I used to say free, but if it was free, then I'd have to take money from somewhere and it would cost the taxpayers. So better health care, that's what I'd like to see. I would like to see money spent wisely moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Redistricting, I hate to tell you, as I look at all of you here, people are saying this is a referendum on where this state goes. Is taxes a part of that solution?
I think taxes is a part of the solution in the sense that we have to recognize we have a less and less competitive state. People are voting with their feet and leaving our state because of our high tax burden and our high cost of living. When I was in the Obama administration, Biden would always say, if you want to know your values, look at your budget. And part of our problem is that we have a 1950s backwards budget. We spend twice as much on roads as we do on public transit. We spend about as much on prisons and policing as we do on higher education. We spend much less on universal pre-K than other states. And so for me, it's about looking at spending as well as revenues. On spending, we end up paying for our problems rather than solving through a smart strategic investments. It's why I promote universal pre-K. But on revenues, we've got to grow our economy, which is what I plan to do.
Thank you.
Senator Madaleno, you've been dealing with budgets ever since I've known you. Golly gee, please help us understand that if you continue to tax people, will they, as your fellow candidate said, move with their feet?
Look, we have a robust tax system in the state of Maryland, one that is progressive and fair, and one that is actually turning out the revenues that we need to put in the investments that grow our economy for everyone, especially the middle class. We've got, and I'm confident by the end of June, we will have a $500 million budget surplus right now. The question that's facing the voters, the question that will be facing us in government next year is, where does that money go? It should go into education. It should go into infrastructure. It should go into the investments that build the economy so that we have the revenues to keep the investments going. We are in a strong position in Maryland. We should keep it up.
Mr. Ross, I'm going to go to you real quick because we only got a couple more minutes left. Go ahead and try and answer.
I don't see the world as being divided between Democrats and Republicans. This is the way this group thinks, this is the way that group thinks. I think a little differently. What is part of my solution? I want to legalize adult use of marijuana. That's $800 million a year worth of an illegal trade that we can bring above board, do like we did in Colorado, tax it, regulate it, send hundreds of millions of dollars to the Treasury. There's a good start.
Mr. Shea, go ahead.
I will not raise taxes, but I will not promise that I'll lower taxes. I've run a business. The only way to get to the point where we can lower taxes is to invest in education and infrastructure. If we make those investments, we will have a much more robust economy, and somewhere down the road, we will be able to lower taxes.
Ms. Irvin, go ahead.
Montgomery County voters certainly voted with their feet last year when they voted for term limits because the county council had raised taxes quite significantly in that county. I know that Kevin Kamenetz, while he was Baltimore County executive, did not raise the tax rate ever his whole 8 years as county executive, and was able to provide free college tuition for high school students with a 2.5 GPA to go to community college. I believe in that. Listen, Rashern Baker and I are the only two up here who had to govern during some very, very tough economic times. When I was council president during the height of the recession in 2011, we had $250 million shortfall. We did not raise taxes.
Mr. Baker, you get the last word.
I get the last word. I couldn't raise taxes. There's a tax limit in Prince George's County, and we have to balance our budget. So we had to make priorities with our budget, and we did that around education, public safety. But here's where we're missing. The governor talks about, giving tax relief, but he's not offered one tax bill, whether it's business tax relief or whether it's income tax. Not one has passed through. So what we see is somebody talking a good game. What has to happen, and what we've done in the county, is we increase our revenues by expanding our business opportunity, mostly around small and local minority and women-owned businesses that employ more people, and we use those revenues to actually provide free college tuition at our community college, to actually provide more health care. But unless you do that, you're not going to have the revenues, and so that's what we're faced around. Thank you.
C4, we're at the 2-minute mark now.
Attorney Shea, I want to begin with you. If you're the next governor of the state of Maryland, you will be responsible for drawing the legislative and congressional redistricting lines. Right now, the Supreme Court is hearing a case around our 6th congressional district and the fact that it's gerrymandered. The 3rd congressional district is recognized as one of the most gerrymandered districts in the country. How would you as governor help to keep our politics from being so polarized, this gerrymandering process?
Yeah, when I was assistant attorney general, I handled the redistricting cases in the 1980s, so I'm familiar with the law. We should have a bipartisan approach to gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is responsible, I believe, for creating the polarized debate that we've got in this country. On the other hand, I'm not in favor of unilateral disarmament. For every Democratic state where there's gerrymandering, I think there are a good number of Republican states. I would take the law that we've got here in Maryland. Our Constitution defines how a district should be shaped. We should take that law and forge a deal with other governors so that we all get out of this polemic.
Sir, we're going to keep moving here.
Ben Jealous, when it comes to this commission, Governor, who should draw the lines?
About 30 seconds, we're going to try to get everyone in.
Sure. We should have a commission. We should respect, quite frankly, historic boundary lines of communities. You can drive down 495 and go through 4 congressional districts and 5 exits. It doesn't make any sense. At the same time, we have to get together with other states. We cannot unilaterally disarm in this moment.
County Executive Baker.
Sorry, what was the question?
Redistricting commission, should the governor do it? I mean, we have lines that are horrific.
Now, what's going to happen on this? Just imagine, if Larry Hogan is re-elected, what we'll see is these lines right now, he'll draw them so that we get more Republicans going to Congress, helping Trump in the things that we're against. So what I would do is a fair commission to draw the lines. I've been through that process before. You and I both have when we were in the legislative body. We have to make sure that everybody is represented. But we know that every jurisdiction would like their own state representative and their state delegates and their own congressmen for their jurisdiction, Baltimore City or Prince George's County.
Sir, I'm going to have to stop you here, and I'm going to have to stop the questioning here in the studio. As we mentioned early on in our debate, we do have a taped segment from Ralph Jaffe. Here it is.
First, I want to thank MPT for giving me an opportunity to share some thoughts with your viewers. Let me stress, I am not a politician. I'm a teacher. And I started a movement 15 years ago to begin the process of getting rid of all the corruption in Maryland politics. And so I want your viewers to know that what I stand for is this. I do not take campaign contributions like the others do, because to me they are bribes. I want to get money out of politics. And also I want to put a stop to these career politicians, because all they care about is themselves. They don't care about you or me. And so that's what the Jaffe movement is all about. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time here, so I'm going to say this. To be continued. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me. If you want to do something about the corruption in politics, you don't have any excuses this time, because I am running to put a stop to all the corruption, and to put a stop to all the money that exchanges hands, and to put a stop to these career politicians. This is what the Jaffe movement is all about. And if you have any questions, I do respond to telephone calls. Please feel free to call me. I would love to talk with you.
Mr. Jaffe, what's your plan for education?
I have a tutor mentor program, tutor team mentor program, which is designed to give every student in the Baltimore City classroom an opportunity to connect with a tutor mentor team. And that tutor mentor team will stay with that student from the day they connect until the day that student either gets a job after high school or gets a job after college. And that tutor mentor team, let me repeat that again, that tutor mentor team will stay with that student until that student gets a job either after high school or college. And as far as I'm concerned, that is something that won't cost the taxpayers 1 penny. That's the beauty of this. Won't cost you 1 penny. That's what we're all about.
Let's move on to our second question. What's your plan for the environment?
The environment is like this. I'm not going to lie to your audience. They're too intelligent. That's not my field of expertise is corruption in government. It's also crime and education. When it comes to a problem like the environment, I'm going to listen to you, the voters. I want to know what your ideas are for environment. What do you think is the major problem we need to deal with when it comes to the environmental programs? For every person that says A, I can find somebody who says B. I want to know what you have to say about this, because I'm going to rely on you. I trust you, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to find out what you want to do. And that's what that's what my plan is all about.
Tell me how we strengthen the state's economy.
How we strengthen the state's economy? The answer to that question is like jobs. The answer is jobs. Now, how do you do that? Again, the tutor mentor team, that's what that's all about. To provide students, the young, with an opportunity to be with successful people. See, the problem right now is our young students, our young people in Baltimore City have a sense of hopelessness. I want to bring to them hope. And the best way to do that is to connect with successful people, people who made a success of their lives, who are willing to help these young people become meaningful and gainfully employed. That's what we're all about.
Lastly, how would you improve access to health care?
Okay. First of all, the health program is all, parliamentary, is all screwed up because we have these phony politicians who pass laws that really are catering to the special interest groups and not to the individuals themselves. And so what I'm proposing is a plan whereby you will have an opportunity to keep your doctor and also to try to get the premiums to maintain where they're at. Now, the truth is nobody has come up with a plan that I think is satisfactory. Nobody has. This is complicated, and you can't answer this in 30 seconds. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to insult your viewers.
Thank you, Mr. Jaffe.
We thank Mr. Jaffe. We also thank Mr. Baker, Ms. Irvin, Mr. Shea, Mr. Ross, Mr. Madalino, Ms. Vignaraja, Mr. Jones, and of course, Mr. Jealous. We want to thank the Reginald Lewis Museum also for hosting us, and thank you for joining us to hear your candidate's position, or maybe it wasn't your candidate tonight, but you learned something new. We're hoping that you will participate, though, come June 26th in the primary election. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks, sir. Good to meet you.
This program is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Tonight on MPT.
Next time on Antiques Roadshow, our cameras found treasures inside and out at an historic Newport mansion, Rosecliff.
I saw in the newspaper the day before that there was an Egyptian mummy in the auction, so I thought I need to get down there and buy that mummy.
Of course.
A little more than I thought it was going to be. That's exciting.
That's wonderful.
Don't miss Antiques Roadshow's visit to Rosecliff in Newport, Rhode Island.
Tonight at 8 on MPT.
This is member-supported Maryland Public Television. The next Maryland Farm and Harvest looks at a family's growing legacy.